This is Holy Sorta. I'm your host, Curtis. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. This is the podcast where we operate at the crossroads of God and government, y'all. Truth still rocks here, light still leads, and we know sometimes faith ain't pretty. So sit back, stay tuned, send us your comments. Let's get into it.
A nation founded on faith. Now we're divided. We're not as holy as we used to be, but truth still rocks. Light still leads. This is Holy Sorta.
Do any of y'all remember when politics used to be boring and they got stuff done and it made a difference for everyday Americans? Do y'all remember that? I mean, maybe we didn't trust them all the time, but at least we knew they were about the business of the people and the voters. Nowadays, it seems like as Americans and voters, we just increasingly believe this is the way it should be, that our politicians should be on all the morning talk shows and that they should be performing and entertaining us more than governing us and being in tune with what the voters want. You know, what if the biggest divide in America isn't the Republicans versus the Democrats? What if it is political entertainment? What if it is the voters versus the performance? Think about it. Every election cycle feels like a new season of reality television. We got the same villains and the same heroes. You know, sometimes they switch up, but there's sometimes the same people just playing different roles. You know, it's the same outrage. It's the same promises, the same predictions that democracy will end if the other side wins. And yet somehow, after all the blaming, screaming, all the campaign ads, and billions of dollars, all the social media battles and the federal debt keeps growing. It's 39.21 trillion last time I checked, guys. Government keeps expanding. Public trust keeps collapsing, and ordinary Americans keep feeling like they have less and less influence over what's going on in their future. So, let me stop and just say here's today's Holy Sorta question. Is politics becoming more theater than leadership? There's a reason we call it political theater, and that our elected officials are known as political actors. Okay, so is politics becoming more theater than leadership? Let me know. Send me a comment. If it is, who's really running the show? Who's producing? Who's the director? Come on, chime in. Let me know what's going on in this country. I'm trying to figure it out. The current event we're going to look at today is why many Americans remain stunned, in fact, traumatized by the political landscape. Some wonder how the Democratic Party, with nearly 2 centuries of history, enormous fundraising efforts, major media support, and institutional influence, how could they lose to Donald Trump, President Trump? Others ask a different question. How do the Republicans continually promise dramatic change yet often struggle to fundamentally alter the direction of government once they gain power? Once they're in power, where are all these promises? These frustrations have fueled growing suspicion. Some Americans, I'm not saying me, some Americans believe in a deep state. You heard that term? Deep state, the deep state this, the deep state that. You hear it just about every day on some news talk show, some news entertainment partisan show, the deep state. Others point to permanent bureaucracies. Hey, y'all, the bureaucrats are in charge. Look up some research. Check out some academic research. The bureaucrats rule, okay? Intelligence agencies, lobbying groups, corporate interests, wealthy donors, and entrenched institutions continue operating regardless of which party wins elections. So whoever wins, these folks, the bureaucrats at the agencies, running national security, running the IRS, running this, running that, they stay there. The politicians leave. So who's got the power? The polls, some trusted polls, consistently show declining trust in government. This has been going on for decades, but it's getting worse. Okay? Not just declining trust in government, but in the media, the fourth estate, who used to be nonpartisan, at least somewhat. Now there's a lot of them, not all of them, a lot of them, most of them are just talking heads, reading the government releases, talking to the elected officials and parroting that, and then having the elected officials on as guests on their programs to repeat the talking points that get in our heads, that distract us from 40 trillion, billion's nothing, right? 40 trillion in debt nowadays. Okay? Trust in the media, trust in corporations, and even higher education is down, blowing up. Okay, who can we trust? Americans, we increasingly feel that decisions affecting our lives are made somewhere beyond our reach. And all we can do is vote. We can send a letter or email to our elected official and hope to get a response on the national level. So we're going to get beyond this here in a minute. What can we do? Okay, but this all doesn't mean there's some secret conspiracy. It doesn't mean that the deep state truly exists, does it? Does it? But it does raise a serious question. How much power, all right, how much power do elected officials actually possess? Some more than others, right? Power, money. How much power do the elected officials have? The average elected official. Okay, here's the reality. History offers us some clues. Governments are very complicated. The federal government, is the largest employer in the nation, maybe the world, with millions of employees. How do you control that? Imagine what's going on in that. Think about where you work and how out of control it can seem at sometimes. And then think about that with millions of people working there. Okay, and some of you may be federal government employees, local, state. Let me know what you think. Governments are far more complicated than elections. Presidents come and go, governors come and go, senators, congressmen. We'd like for them to come and go. Some of them stay there way too long, right? Term limits, congressional majorities change. But maybe there's an argument to be made against term limits in some cases. I don't know. That's just a question. Governors rise and fall, but institutions endure. Presidents rise and fall, governments rise and fall. The political parties rise, ebb and flow in popularity. They have great candidates sometimes. Sometimes they're in tune with what the voters want, but do they carry out what the voters actually voted for and elected them for? Okay, think back a little bit. Maybe maybe you weren't born yet, but just think about Director J. Edgar Hoover of the FBI. He served under 8 presidents, y'all. Think about that. Think about Tom Holman, who served under, what does he say, 5 or 6 presidents? He's been there. He knows what's going on. Okay? That's why President Trump called him back in for this immigration deal. Many politics feared him more than they feared losing elections. Talking about J. Edgar Hoover. Many politicians feared the FBI director more than their constituents. Okay? That's a problem. Think about other federal agencies. Like I said, federal government employs millions of workers across thousands of offices and programs. Just check out how many agencies, departments there are. It's all out there in public information. It's on the internet. Policies established by elected officials. Now, those continue and go on for years and decades because institutions develop momentum. Okay, institutional momentum. Political scientists and other academics, like public administration guys like me, sometimes refer to this as bureaucratic inertia. And bureaucracy is an interesting word. We'll get into that some other time. In simple language, though, large organizations tend to keep going and doing what they were already doing. Now, let's add in media organizations and corporations and labor unions and activist groups and think tanks and wealthy donors and technology companies and intelligence agencies and international organizations. Suddenly, government starts to look a lot less like a single person steering a ship and more like dozens of powerful groups all pulling on the wheel at the same time, y'all. This isn't necessarily evidence, though, of a secret plot. It's just a big ship we're trying to steer, we're trying to turn. It takes a long time, and sometimes you can't turn it. It's evidence, though, that power is complicated. Governing is complicated. And complicated systems can feel invisible to the ordinary citizens. Just think about where you work. Do you know what's going on with the executive leadership all the time? Are things transparent in your world? Think about it on a federal government level. Okay? How complicated is that? Now, the deeper question here, and this is where things get even more interesting. Even if there isn't a secret room where elites are controlling everything, political theater is absolutely real. Okay? I mean, you heard about war rooms and all that. So there are secret rooms. Okay? But maybe they're not plotting to a level and conspiring to a level we think. Maybe. How do we know? Campaigns spend billions crafting narratives. Elective campaigns, political campaigns. They spend billions on their candidates. Why? Media outlets compete for attention. Social media algorithms reward outrage, and political consultants know fear generates engagement. Every side has incentives to keep voters emotionally invested. Why? Why? Because outrage is profitable. Okay? Outrage sells ads. It gets clicks, which sells ads. Okay? Fear drives clicks. Conflict drives ratings. Division drives donations. We're a long way away from boring politics. Okay, we're into outrage. We're in the outrage machine, y'all. We're caught up in the outrage machine. It's a vicious cycle. The more emotionally activated citizens become, the more likely they are to participate, donate, share, repost, and remain loyal, viciously loyal, savagely loyal in some cases to their side, to their party. In that sense, politics sometimes resembles, professional wrestling, let's say. The conflict is real. The competitors genuinely want to win, but the audience is also a part of the product. So I contend maybe voters are a part of the product today. But let's slow down. Let me calm down a second, and let's look at this from a reality, faith, worldview perspective, okay? The Bible has something surprisingly relevant to say about power. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus tells his followers, be as shrewd as serpents and as innocent as doves. Be as shrewd as serpents and as innocent as doves. Notice what he didn't say. He didn't say be naive. He didn't say believe everything, hook, line, and sinker. He didn't say trust every leader. He didn't say every authority figure has pure motives. No, he didn't say that. Jesus repeatedly challenged religious authorities, political authorities, and social authorities. Why did he do that? Why? Because human beings are flawed. We are capable of greatness, but we are flawed at our core. Okay? Power corrupts judgment. And institutions can become self-protective. Okay? Groups can begin serving themselves rather than the people they were created to serve. Sound familiar? Groups can begin serving themselves, organizations, agencies, rather than the people that were created to serve. But Scripture also warns against another danger, paranoia. Let's don't get so paranoid, but seeing evil behind every event, assuming every setback is a proof of a conspiracy, a threat, believing that hidden forces explain everywhere, that's not healthy either. Healthy skepticism does ask questions. At Holy Sorta, we say question everything and grow intentionally. Questions are good, they help us to understand. But unhealthy suspicion assumes answers. Okay, the key, wise people, wisdom means that we follow truth wherever it leads, even if it's a truth we don't like, that doesn't agree with our beliefs, our belief system, our party line, the talking points we're being fed each and every day. Holy Sorta argues that both blind trust and blind cynicism are dangerous. Dangerous. Okay, let's move on to the personal growth lesson. Enough lecturing, right? Yeah. So here's the practical lesson. The average American may have less influence than they would like. Sometimes we roll with the flow, but sometimes, darn it, we want to have a little more influence. We want to be more in control. We want to be in control of our lives, and we want to be able to create better lives for our families and loved ones and our friends around us. But more and more, we don't have that influence we're seeking. But we do have more influence than we realize. The problem is many of us focus on national politics because it's dramatic. Okay, it's entertaining, it's a show, and it's captivating. They do a good job. I think Hollywood came into DC, and that's what we got today, right? A combination of entertainment and politics, and it's just distracting us all and keeping us focused on that national platform. Meanwhile, and this is what we learn and teach in public administration, local government often has a greater impact on daily life. Think about that. Think about who provides your utility services, who picks up your garbage every day, every week, not every day, every week. Where do you get your water from? Where do you pay your sewer bill? Okay, who are you paying local property taxes to? Where does your kids go to school? Local government, school boards, county commissions, city council. Who comes when you call the police, when you call 911? Who shows up to save your life? Local government, sheriffs, state legislators, public utilities. Who comes to clean up when there's a disaster in your town? Sometimes FEMA, but it's your local responders who get there first. Okay? Who operates the public transportation system where you live? Local government, transportation agencies and authorities, planning commissions, plan out your city. They build your parks. Okay? Most Americans, I'm guilty of this, I have to admit it. I can't really name the people who serve me in these roles. Not all of them. I know some of them. I don't know all of them. And these officials, though, they make decisions that affect taxes, development, education, infrastructure, public safety, far more directly than the latest cable news controversy, far more directly than what we're watching on our local cable channel about the national events going on and those folks, those political actors. Okay? If politics is becoming theater, one way to resist becoming part of the public audience is to become part of the community. Say that again. One way to resist becoming part of the audience is to become part of your local community. The people closest to the problem are often closest to the solution. Okay? So that's the challenge. The challenge is with this episode, here's the challenge. Here's the challenge. Who is secretly controlling everything? Stop thinking that. Stop asking that. Who's controlling everything? Where's this conspiracy? Okay? Start asking, what evidence supports my beliefs? What is actually documented? Where are the facts? What is speculation and what is fact? What incentives are driving the people telling me this story? Is it clicks? Is it ads? Is it that national ad revenue? The big money driving big corporations? Is that what it is? Who benefits from my attention as a viewer, as a voter on the federal level? And who benefits from my outrage? And perhaps most importantly, am I spending more time watching politics than improving my own community? Because whether the problem is politicians, bureaucrats, billionaires, trillionaires now, media organizations, or ordinary citizens, one truth remains. Free societies survive when citizens remain informed, engaged, thoughtful, and humble, not when we become spectators. Not when we're spectators. When we're engaged in our communities on the local level, on the regional level, the state level. That's where our attention needs to be. That's what makes an impact, okay? That goes back to the federalism and the Constitution and the role of the federal government and the role of local governments, okay? That's the place that deserves the most of our attention and efforts and focus and concentration. Okay, so let's wrap it up. Let's wrap this up. Maybe politics is partly theater. I know it is on the national federal level. It's sometimes it's great TV, okay? But sometimes it gets you more worked up than relaxed, right? Theater and entertainment is supposed to kind of at least relax you a little bit, maybe make you think, but not get you outraged and up in arms. Really? It's an escape from reality. Um, it's partly theater, though. It's a lot like theater on the federal level. Maybe some leaders are performers, political actors. Maybe institutions possess more influence than elections alone can explain. Maybe. I'll throw maybe in there, but how powerful are institutions, government institutions? But before we assume someone else is controlling the script here, we should ask a harder question. Are we paying attention to the right stage? Are we paying attention to the right stage? Are we looking and paying more focus on the federal stage than the community stage, our local stage? The one where our kids go to school, where we have to go and be safe and eat in restaurants that we hope are safe, who need to be inspected. Okay? That kind of thing. If our house catches on fire, who's coming to put out the fire? Is it the federal government? No, not likely. Never. Okay. Y'all, thanks for watching. Send me your comments. Please subscribe, like, share if you do. I appreciate that. And keep me going for at least one more episode. Maybe 10 more, maybe 100 more. As long as we can keep this going, the more I can share this message with you that federal government is important, okay, but it's entertaining more than it's a governance, more than they're solving problems, I think. They're entertaining us and they're getting us enraged and all caught up in the outrage machine. Let's pull back out of that and let's focus on our local communities. That's the folks that need our help, our attention, and deserve our focus and energies. Okay? All right, y'all. This has been Holy Sorta. I'm Curtis. Remember, question everything and grow intentionally. And remember, sometimes faith ain't pretty. Thanks for joining. Be good.